Hello everybody, welcome to the English classroom. In this class, we are going to learn the article Dangers of Drug Abuse, written by Dr. Hardin B. Jones. So this is a very informative article that helps us understand what are the difficulties, what are the dangerous situations that the people who are addicted to drugs passing through. Okay, anyway, let's get into the chapter. Before that, you have now understood the urgency of the task to protect the world around us. So from the chapter, when a sapling is planted, the speech delivered by Wangari Maathai, you understood that what is the importance of preserving the world, what is the importance of taking care of the environment around you, right? So will this alone suffice? So, but just taking care of the your environment is just enough? Is that enough? Is that sufficient? Can a society thrive without ensuring that individuals maintain a healthy lifestyle? So for a society, if to thrive, if to grow, it should ensure that all the members of it lead a healthy life, right? Each and every one of the society should be leading a healthy life. Then only a society can grow. Won't life itself be in jeopardy if individuals surrender themselves to different kinds of addictions? So if people get addicted to different things, one life will be at risk. One life will be in dangerous situation. Yes, so what are the dangers await those who get into the addictions? Let's see. So before that, let's see about Hardin Blair Jones, 1978, was born in Los Angeles, California. He was professor of medical physics and psychology and assistant director of Donner Laboratory, University of California, Berkeley. So he was a doctor, not just a physical doctor, and he was a psychologist too. Okay, he was a professor of medical physics and psychology and assistant director of Donner Laboratory, University of California, Berkeley. Dangers of drug abuse is a timely warning to the modern society. So it is a very relevant topic to be discussed in this time. Dangers of drug abuse, part 1. Okay, drugs have been discovered to prevent and cure physical diseases and reverse the disturbance that occur in some mental illness. Right. So what is the use of drugs? We all know that we all resort to drugs. We all resort to medicines because they are discovered. They have been discovered. The drugs have been discovered to prevent and cure physical diseases. Right. Because what is the intention of discovering drugs? It is to cure our disease and reverse the disturbance that occur in some mental illness and to remove the problems that we face mentally, right? Excitement over what drugs can do has led people to believe that any ailment, infective or psychic means of mind, can be relieved by taking a pill. But do you know nowadays people believe that for any simple problems, for any silly problems, they can take drugs. The excitement over what drugs can do has led people to believe that any ailment, any infective or psychic can be relieved by taking a pill. They believe that anything can be relieved by a pill. At the first sign of nervousness, they try pep pills. So when people see some kind of nervousness, they feel they have some kind of cold or some smaller symptoms, they start to resort to pills. Pep pills means pills which can increase vigor. Right, so people, when they find it difficult to breathe, sometimes some kind of cold or something happens, they resort to medicines and they intake pills. Right, medical journals now advertise tranquilizers and amphetamines and other mood-altering drugs. So nowadays, medical journals also advertise. They give advertisements of pills. Tranquilizers means drugs used for reducing anxiety. People having anxiety, they can use these drugs. They give advertisements through the journals. Amphetamines means compounds used as drugs. That is a kind of essential drugs that stimulate our power. And other mood-altering drugs, they also give advertisements of other mood-altering drugs. Doctors prescribe them. So if you have some kind of mental problems, something like that, you are facing anxiety or something like that, doctors themselves prescribe medicines like this, drugs like this. In such an atmosphere, it is not surprising that drug abuse has spread. So in such a case, already this is the case, even doctors themselves prescribe pills like this. So either it is not strange and it is not a matter of wonder that people have resorted to drugs, and the drug abuse have been widely spread. The drug abuse has been widely spread. When people become dependent on drugs to solve their problems, they lose their capacity to deal with life situation through perseverance and self-discipline and mental effort. So people, for silly matters, they resort to drugs, and so they lose their ability to encounter their life situation through perseverance. Perseverance means the capacity. What is perseverance? Means ability to go on in spite of difficulties. So in the beginning, we should have tried ourselves, right? What can we do without resorting to the medicines? We can try ourselves, but people have lost that sense, self-discipline and mental effort. So if you have some kind of self-discipline, and if you deliberately try some kind of adversity, some kind of physical ailments can be overcome. But what happens nowadays, people, when they find a smaller symptoms of something, they resort to medicines. Okay, it is now often considered naive to expend energy on solving a problem when there is an easy way out. Nowadays, it is considered to be foolish. Naive means simple and artless. In other words, you can say foolish. Nowadays, people consider it to be foolish that you try to overcome some situation with your power rather than resorting to medicines. Then people will say, he's a fool. Why does he take that risk? He could have taken a pill. That's the situation now. Nowadays, people consider trying yourself to solve a problem, spend energy on solving a problem when there is an easy way. People will call you, he's a fool, right? It is a simple step from, look what drugs do for me when I feel depressed, to imagine what drugs can do for me when I feel good already. So nowadays, people think that already when I have some problems, I take drugs and I become better, right? Then people started to think, what happens if I take pills when I am better already, when I am good already? If I am good, what happens if I take drugs? So people started to think that if I am sick, I can take pills and it makes me better. Then what happens if I take pills when I am well enough? So people started to think differently. Okay, a distinction must be made, however, between medicines and essential drugs. We must not disdain the real and important advances science has made. So we should make difference between what is a medicine and what is essential drug. Right? There should be a difference. We should identify the difference distinction between these two things. Distinction must be made, however, between medicines and the essential drugs. We must not disdain, means consider with contempt. We should not consider with contempt the real and important advances science has made. Science has made a lot of importance, right? Advanced a lot, and we should recognize it, and we have to make the difference between what are essential drugs and what are medicines. Okay, the history of medical use of drugs goes back 23 centuries to Hippocrates. So the history of taking pills, taking drugs goes back to 23 centuries to Hippocrates, the Greek physician who is regarded as the father of medicine. So Hippocrates is considered to be the father of the medicine, and the history of taking medicine goes back to him. He was the first to recognize that a remedy must take into account not only the symptoms of the disease, but also the constitution and habit of the patient. So before you give medicine to someone, you just don't check what ailment, what is the disease the person has. Right? What is the disease the person has? Instead, you have to check what is his ability, what is his lifestyle, and if I give him this medicine, how will it affect? Right? But then don't just judge, don't just jump to the conclusion that this medicine is for this symptom. And the medicine should be considered based on not only the symptom and the capacity of the patient, his lifestyle, his habits, right? That's why Hippocrates says, He says a remedy must take into account not only the symptoms of the disease but also the constitution and habit of the patient. What type of person he is, how is his life behavior, his habit, things like that. His principles have come down to us as the dictum. So his principles, his doctrines come to us, down to us as the dictum, means why saying it is our principles. The principle that Hippocrates set as the principles of healthy life came to us as the principle of ourselves, that the medicine must specifically suit the disease and the patient. So the medicine that we give to a person, to a patient, should suit to his disease and the patient, right? That is, when there is a disorder, only a drug that specifically mitigates that disorder should be used. So if some person has some problem, the medicine that is given to the person should be specifically to mitigate that disorder, not for any other thing. Only it should be used only for that particular thing, right? So mitigate means to lessen. So the drug that specifically mitigate, that specifically lessen the disorder should be used, right? The prescribed very accurate. We should be very accurate while we suggest medicines to a patient. The drug should also have restorative effects, or it will unbalance healthy functions of the brain and body. So the drug should have the restorative effect. The drug that you give to a patient should have the restorative power, that by consuming the drug, the patient should be able to come back to his healthy situation, right, to his healthy life. Or it will unbalance the healthy function of his brain or body. If not, what happens? It creates imbalance in his mental and physical movements and functions, right? The correlative of these principles is that a healthy person cannot benefit from taking a drug. So what is the principle? A healthy person cannot take drugs, because all the drugs have particular aim, right? All the drugs have particular function. So by consuming that drug, it should satisfy that function. So the person who hasn't any type of physical problem should not consume medicine, right? That's the correlation. Correlative of this principle is that a healthy person cannot benefit from taking a drug. This too comes from Hippocrates, who said person in good health quickly lose their strength by taking purgative medicines. So this dictum, this theory also comes from Hippocrates. He said a person in good health, if he takes purgative means medicine that causes high laxative. Okay, so then if you take purgative, it weakens a good person, it weakens a healthy person too, right? So if you are sound, if you are well, if you are healthy, you need not to take any kind of medicines. That's what Hippocrates says. Okay, by taking purgative medicine, chiefly of a drug or medicine, tending to stimulate or facilitate evacuation of the bowels. So for any reason, you don't take any kind of medicines if you are well enough, sound as a nut. It is said you are healthy. If you are sound as a nut, or if you are fit as a fiddle, don't take any type of medicine. The distinction between medicines and essential drugs is simple. What is the difference? So here you have to understand some things, and based on this, we have actually, this article is very informative, and it is really timely to it. Helps us understand so many things which will be useful for us maybe in our life, sometime for us to help others too. And at the same time, we have to view this chapter for our exam purpose also, right? So from this part, you can understand some important points which will be of immense use for you. If you were asked to prepare some kind of article, sometime you may be asked to prepare a speech against use of drugs. So you should know what are essential drugs, what are medicines, and what should we use and what we shouldn't use, right? And how does it affect our body, how does it affect our mental systems. Things like this have been elaborately mentioned. You have to understand, right? So here you can understand what is the distinction between medicines and essential drugs. It is simple. Essential drugs, body has no need for, but that gives the user a strong sense of pleasure. So essential drugs means drugs that body doesn't need it. Your body doesn't need essential drugs, but what happens if you consume essential drugs? It gives you some kind of pleasure, right? A strong sense of pleasure. So if use this thing just for pleasure, what happens? We will explain it later. So sensual drugs are drugs which the body doesn't need for, and it gives us a strong sense of pleasure. Sensual drugs activate the brain's pleasure centers. So that while one consumes sensual drugs, it activates the pleasure centers of brain. We do not know precisely how they do it, whether they stimulate the pleasure center directly or activate them through chemical mimicry. And we do not know how does this happen. Anyway, it happens. Once sensual drugs is consumed, it activates the pleasure centers of your mind, and we do not know precisely, in short, clearly how does this happen. Anyway, this happens, right? In this text, I will refer to both possibilities as stimulation, and here Dr. Hardin B. Jones is going to refer both possibilities. Sometimes it directly activates, sometimes it's through some kind of chemical reactions. So in this text, the author Hardin B. Jones is going to explain both possibilities as stimulations. So here Hardin B. Jones says, we do not know how does the drug affect our mind. Sometimes it may affect it directly, or sometimes it is just through chemical mimicry. Chemical mimicry means imitation. So the drugs imitate the function that takes place in our mind naturally, right? Already in our mind, in our body, chemical functions take place naturally, right? By God's grace, it happens. And sometimes by consuming this pill, the pill imitates the function in our mind that takes place naturally, and it helps us to stimulate, it helps us to activate our pleasure centers. So anyway, he is going to explain what happens. Okay, let's see. The brain governs sensations, mood, thoughts, and actions not by a magical process, but by an incredibly complex series of chemically regulated controls. So in our brain, in our head, a lot of chemical reactions take place. So all the things that we do are based on the chemical reactions. It is a process, chemical process actually, right? The brain governs sensations, mood, thought, all our sensations, feelings, right? And our moods and our thoughts. All these things have been governed, regulated, controlled by brain, not by a magical process, but by an incredibly complex series of chemically regulated controls. So it is based on a chemically regulated control. These are easily upset by sensual drugs. So then what happens when one takes a sensual drug? This upsets the chemical process in our mind, and it's completely collapsed. It gets collapsed. This disturbance is apparent in the effect of sensual drugs on the mechanism that control pleasure and satisfaction. So once sensual drug is taken, it upsets the chemical process, the smooth chemical process that is going on in our mind, and the effect is visible, it is apparent, and the disturbance is apparent in the effect of the sensual drugs. Its effects we can feel that on the mechanism that controls pleasure and satisfaction. So it gives us some kind of pleasure and satisfaction. A drug user's craving for the drug continues. So what happens? The one who found satisfaction, who found happiness by consuming a drug, he continues consuming it, right? The craving for drugs continues, then his desire for the drug continues, but he feels less and less satisfaction. So as he tries to satisfy himself, as he tries to find happiness using drugs, he continues to use drugs. Then what happens? The happiness that he feels by consuming the drug getting less and less, right? So if you take a single pill, if someone takes a single pill for satisfaction, he gets satisfaction for the first time, and next time when he wants to get satisfied himself, he will have to take more than one. He will have to use more. So the satisfaction that the single pill gives comes less and less, so he will have to have more pills to find satisfaction, right? A drug user's craving for the drugs continues, his desire for using the drugs continues, but he feels less and less satisfaction. But the satisfaction that he feels using by a single pill getting less and less, his brain's pleasure reflexes seem to be weakened by artificial stimulation. So what happened? His brain's pleasure reflexes means movements in response to some outside influences. So through the outside influence, through the outside pill, he tries to make his pleasure centers active, right? He wanted to activate his pleasure centers in his brain using an outside pills. Then it started to get weakened, right? It is weakened. The brain's pleasure reflexes seem to be weakened by artificial stimulations. Okay, so when people take pills and artificially they try to create satisfaction and happiness, then our mind, the pleasure centers in our mind get weakened and they fail to reflect, they fail to react, right? Then they find it difficult to find happiness with what they consumed before. They will have to intake more. Okay, in severe addiction, the pleasure mechanism fails to respond to drug stimulation. So when one gets severely addicted, then the pleasure mechanism fails to respond. So when you take drugs, when someone takes drugs, the pleasure mechanism won't respond. It gets affected that much, right? The drug then imparts only relative relief from misery and suspends the illness of withdrawal. Then what happens? So if someone resort to take pills to find happiness, they continue taking it and they get happiness, but the more they take it, the less satisfaction they find, and at last they do not find any kind of satisfaction. Then still they take the medicine only to lessen, only to relative relief, to get a kind of relief, relatively not complete relief anyway, only a relative relief they get from the misery and suspense, the illness of withdrawal, and they are subjected to the illness of withdrawal. They wanted to withdraw from people. They wanted to keep themselves away from people. Okay. Information from the senses still reaches the brain, but the brain is unable to evaluate the information and interpret it as pleasurable. So when one takes the pills, the information comes to the brain, but the brain fails to evaluate and identify that this is to give him pleasure. The brain fails because of the collapsed chemical reaction that happened in your brain because of the continuous use of these drugs. Okay. In contrast, naturally attained pleasures enlarge the sense of satisfaction and can be repeated indefinitely. In contrast, just opposite to the drugs, the naturally happened happiness, right? Naturally attained pleasures enlarge the sense of satisfaction. So the satisfaction that you got was natural thing, then it expands the satisfaction and can be repeated indefinitely. Right, so the natural happiness, natural pleasure, it gives us satisfaction more and it is repeatable, right? The same thing, when the same incident happens, we feel same happiness, right? So that happens naturally. So once you try to do it artificially, it upsets the whole situation, the whole function, and it creates some kind of bad influence, some kind of, it creates some bad effect in your body as well as in your mind. Okay. Ultimately, the sensory deprivation of the drug addict manifests itself in a general feeling of physical discomfort and impersonality changes. So we can understand the sensory deprivation. The people who have lost their sense, their ability to sense things, the sensory deprivation of drug addict manifests. It can be seen. It shows itself in a general feeling of physical discomfort. They feel some kind of physical discomfort, and in personality changes, we find some kind of changes in their personality. They retreat from the people and they wanted to stay alone, and we find some kind of changes in their attitude towards people. Right? The addict feels depressed and fails to respond either to his environment or to other people. He feels depressed and he fails to respond positively. He fails to respond positively to his atmosphere and at the same time to that of the others. Right? He does not know what to do in particular situation. He does not know how to respond to people when they talk to them. His mental disturbance can be quite similar to paranoia. His mental disorder, it can be something just like delusion, right? Some kind of mental illness. Right? He cannot discern the source of his problem. He cannot understand from where does he have problem. He cannot understand what is his problem. From where does he have the problem? Discern the source of his problem and looks for the cause in everything but himself. And he searches for the problem. From where do I have all these problems? And he searches everywhere except in himself. He does not know that all the problem happens because of the drug that he used. He searches for the reason, why do I have all these problems, except in himself. Paranoia means insanity, mental problem, right, which leads a person to develop illusion. Discern means to understand. Okay. Anything external is suspect. So he suspects anything other than himself. He does not look at himself. What is the reason for the problem? He suspects anything else. He draws further and further into himself. Then he shrinks himself and he draws himself away from the society, and he wanted to be alone, away from people. The addict often feels people are looking at him strangely, and they feel that people are looking at them strangely. They just imagine. Actually, it may not be the case. People just look at him as they do on others, but they feel that they are looking at me strangely. A person told Dr. Hardin B. John, one told me that he wasn't sure when people smiled at him that they were not really laughing. If you smile at an addicted person, they may feel that you are laughing at them, right? The addict can even lose his sense of being alive, and sometimes they do not know if they are alive or not. They lose the sense of being alive. He feels dead inside. They feel dead inside. One rehabilitated heroin addict described his sensory deprivation to me. So one heroin addict, heroin is such kind of drug, and one who was addicted to heroin explained his situation, that he says to Hardin B. John that looking out of the window, he said, the sun is shining, the flowers are in bloom. I know these are signs of a good day. He sees the sun shines, he sees the flowers blooming, everything he sees, and he knows that all these are the sign of a good day, but pressing his chest, I don't feel it here. He says, all these things, I know all these are the signs of a good day, and it is really a good day, I know, but I do not feel it here. He says, pressing his chest, I don't feel it here. I have seen addicts habitually press their fingers deep into their arms or legs as if to reassure themselves of their own reality. And we have seen so many people, addict people, they press their hands very tightly, and sometimes they take it to their legs, sometimes to hands, sometimes to their legs, as if to reassure themselves of their own reality. They want to reassure if they are alive or not. So just by touching, they can't realize if they are touched, right? So they want to press it so hard to realize they are living. It is really difficult situation, right? This craving for lost sensation explained in part the addict need to continue to seek drug-induced sensation. So as they have lost their sensory sensation because of the sensory deprivation, they have to find the sensation anyway, right? They have to know themselves, they have the ability to sense. So this crave for sensation, the craving for sensation, the desire for sensation leads them to consume more and more things like this, right? This craving for the lost sensation, the sensation that they have lost, they needed it, and in part the addict need to continue to seek drug-induced sensation. Then they will have to go for, again, drug-induced sensation. If drugs offered a safe form of pleasure, there might be few objections to using them. As people say, if you use drug, only it is safe kind of sensation. People say so, but if it is the case, if drugs offered a safe form of pleasure, there might be few objections to using them. Then nobody will object you. Nobody will oppose you using them, right? However, the claims that they are safe must be recognized as fake. Then when people say that it is safe, you have to understand it is just a fake argument. No drug is safe. In the face of the non-consequences, of continued drug use. So based on the non-consequence, they may say the drug is safe, but you have to understand it is fake, because there are unknown sides too, right? Real dangers exist, although the drug user often assumes they do not, because their harmful side effects are not immediately apparent, because we do not know the other side of the drug. They are saying that these drugs are safe based on the non-consequences, and there are so many unknown consequences which cannot be seen so soon. It will be seen only after some time, right? And real dangers exist, although the drug user often assume they do not. Drug user think that there is no real dangers exist because the harmful side effects are not immediately apparent. The harmful side effects will be seen only after a few days, only after a few months. So they think that there is no side effect, right? In reality, it is fake. Possible results range from incidental delirious effect to death from overdose. So what are the possible results? It affects incidental delirious. Delirious means, as I said before, the loss of mental power, something like mad, right? An effect to death from overdose, and sometimes it causes death because of overdose. The dangers that lie between the extremes are degeneration of health. So these are the extreme results: death or deliriousness, the loss of mental power, something like getting mad, right? Then what happens in between? Between the extremes are the degeneration of health, weakening of our body, and the depletion of brain function, loss of brain function. Brain function will be lost. After all, act directly on the brain and cause mental mechanism to respond abnormally. Then what happens? It causes mental mechanism to respond abnormally, right? So the response that we receive from our mind, from our mental process, may not be the expected one, right? It will start to respond abnormally. The risks are great for the persistent users. And who has the greater risk? The persistent user, the person who uses it continuously, will have the greater risk. In particular, there is the danger that he will do himself a great deal of harm before the warning symptoms occur. So before he started to see the symptoms of the consequences of his drug addiction, he himself will make some kind of problems to him, right? Socially, physically, and mentally too. Sometimes physically he will scratch himself and make wounds here and there. Sometimes he will create some kind of social problems that he will fight with people, right? So before he started to see the symptoms, he will make his own problem, right? There is the danger that he will do himself a great deal of harm before the warning symptoms occur. Delirious means producing a dreamy state. You will feel that everything is in dream, not in reality. Depletion means emptying. Depletion of mind means emptying, loss of mental power. Okay, drug-related health disorders are many and varied. So many drug-related disorders are there. Dirty needles and solution used for injecting drugs can cause abscesses in the arms and veins, liver disease, venereal disease, and infection of the kidney and brain. So as I said in the before, this part also will be of immense useful for you to prepare article or speech. How does it affect? What is the bad effect of drug abuse, and how does it cause physical problems to us, right? Drug-related health disorders are many and varied. Dirty needles and solutions used for injecting drugs can cause abscesses. Abscess means swelling containing pus. So it can cause swelling on your arm containing pus, right? In the arms and veins, liver disease, it can cause liver disease. Venereal disease means sexual diseases, right? And infection of the kidneys and brain, and it will affect your kidney and brain. Sniffing cocaine and amphetamines can damage the tissue of your nose. So by sniffing cocaine and amphetamines, it will affect your nose, the cells, tissues on your nose. And marijuana and tobacco smoking can cause lung disease. By smoking marijuana, all these are different types of drugs, right? So you should be aware of what are the names of drugs and how does it affect our body. So by smoking marijuana and tobacco, it causes lung disease, right? Marijuana, the common form of drug, cannabis, a type of drug. Heavy users of alcohol, volatile solvents, amphetamines, or marijuana may find that their livers are permanently damaged. So the heavy users of alcohol, volatile solvent means something that used to mix. Volatile solvent means a liquid into which a drug is mixed before drinking. Okay. So those who use alcohol and volatile solvents, amphetamines or marijuana may find that their livers are permanently damaged. Babies of women addicted to opiates, some women use opium, right? The babies of such addicted opiates are likely to be born addicted. They are born addicted and to suffer from withdrawal symptoms. Sometimes they also suffer from withdrawal symptoms. They will find it hard to be with people. They will like to be alone, right? Withdrawal symptom. Cocaine and amphetamines can cause hair to fall out. Hair fall happens because of cocaine and amphetamines. Recent research has indicated that marijuana can damage cells. Marijuana damages our cells. Volatiles, okay, these are word meaning. Okay, a drug user's way of life makes him more susceptible to pneumonia, tuberculosis, malnutrition, and weight loss. So the life habit of an addict, a drug user, make him susceptible, easily vulnerable to disease. He is easy to catch disease, right? Makes him more susceptible to pneumonia, tuberculosis, malnutrition, and weight loss. Finally, an overdose of any of these essential drugs can lead to respiratory or cardiac failure, and so what happens? So he becomes weak. His immune system gets weak, and he's easy to catch any kind of disease, and overdose of any essential drugs can cause him respiratory failure or cardiac failure, heart failure, right? Essential drugs affect the chemistry of the brain cells. So that's what we so far said. It affects our brain cells. Cell function is carried out by thousands of enzymes acting within each cell, right? We all know cell function is carried out through thousands of enzymes acting within each cell. Depending on how the cell chemistry adds up, the cell either reinforces or shifts the dominance of cell pathways and hookups. Hookups means arrangement of mechanical parts acting as an integrated unit. So based on the work of the cells, it is each function has been interconnected, right? And by taking the pills, it is upset and it is affected, right? Each exposure of the cells to psychoactive drugs somehow alter their chemistry. So when someone takes the pills, psychoactive drugs, it alters their chemistry. Toxic chemicals can easily upset the delicate chemical balance of the brain indirect system. So in our brain, there is delicate chemistry working there, right? Chemical system, chemical balance, it is going on in our brain. We do not know what are the magical things happens in our brain. So it is a number of complex chemical process taking place in our brain, and these medicines that we additionally take, the toxic chemicals can easily upset the delicate chemical balance of the brain's intricate system, the complicated system of brain of communication. They may also damage the cell tissue, and this medicine may damage the cell tissue. Toxic effects may be transitory or permanent. So the effect of the medicine may be transitory, it may be for momentary effect, sometimes permanent, depending on the cell damage. So what damage it creates to the cell based on it may be momentary, sometimes it can be permanently too. This article focuses on the effects of drugs on the brain. So the main intention of this article is to give information about how does drugs affect a person's brain. This is not to minimize their effect on their parts of the body. So throughout the article, the author talks about how does it affect our mind, not about our body. So you don't think that it doesn't affect our body. It is not to minimize their effect on the other part of the body. Of course, the drug affects our body too, but here in this article, he wanted to strengthen how does it affect our brain. For this can sometimes be more debilitating, sometimes more complex problems can be affected by drugs to your body. Damage to the brain, however, is the most subtle, but damage that the damage that is that the drugs create to your mind, to your brain is more subtle, it's most important, most often unrecognized. Right? It is most important, but it is the mostly unrecognized. It is not understood actually, and least understood consequence of the drug abuse, and it is the least understood consequence. What does the drug do to our brain is not understood in the proper way. That's why the author wanted to prepare an article and to publish on this matter. It is not to reduce, it is not to tell you that the effect of drugs on your body is less. Of course, it may be bigger, but the subtle one, the most important thing is that the drug affect our brain more than our body. Okay. That's all about today's lesson. These are the glossary. It is just there in your textbook. I hope you understood. Read the chapter thoroughly and understand what are the drugs and how does it affect our system, the chemistry that works in our brain, and what are the problems, what are the diseases that caused by drugs all these things you have to understand. You may be asked to prepare speech, sometimes prepare article, how does it affect human beings, how does it affect our social bonds, things like that. So you should be ready for that. Hope you understood the lesson. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.